On the 6th of June, D-Day was upon us. Across many beaches on the shores of Normandy, thousands of allies would be deployed to liberate Europe. West of Omaha Beach lay Pointe du Hoc. The cliff was heavily fortified by the Germans and used as an observatory and artillery location. As the artillery was able to reach both Omaha and Utah, the Allies chose to attack this point as well. Pointe du Hoc had been bombed many times in the weeks earlier, and before the landing the Navy launched an unheard amount of shells to break the German fortified position. The planned invasion of Pointe du Hoc was delayed by 40 minutes, but when the Americans set foot on the beach, they still found themselves under fire from mortars and artillery. It was chaos as the soldiers ran to the cliff's base while still firing at the German position. Whoever was at the beach was an open target, taken out without any effort. Most soldiers assembled and hurled up at the rocks to stay out of the line of sight of the machine gun nests. At the same time, preparations were made to ascend the cliff by rope and ladder. The ground was shaking as the troops slowly went up, while everything around them burned, and everyone cried out for help. The ones who would reach the top first were greatly outnumbered and had to face overwhelming odds in order to break through. To support the soldiers, the Navy was still shelling the Germans in hope to weaken their defenses. The Americans who reached the top of the cliff waited for more soldiers to arrive before continuing. Besides mortars, the Germans also threw grenades to take out soldiers at the cliff's edge and on the ropes. Several soldiers slipped or fell to their death before firing a single bullet. The Germans positioned at the edge had lost a significant amount of men and had trouble to keep the Americans at bay. Nevertheless, they still came under fire from the inner defenses, creating an absolute wall of death. More and more soldiers reached the top as blood rained down from those who stood no chance from the machine gun fire. But even with the shredding of the first to arrive, the Americans had a large number of troops reach the top and were able to head inward. They frantically ran for the nearest trench to use it as cover, but some got killed before reaching it. With the Germans needing to fall back, most of the mortars were not able to fire upon the enemy. The German soldiers in the next trench got taken out quick as the position of the US troops on the cliff was claimed. But they still suffered losses as their next objective was to head in and take out the artillery, which was nowhere in sight. As most of the US soldiers provided cover, the first of the men emerged from the trenches and moved forward. They used trees, rocks, and sandbags as cover, as their progress was slow but steady. At the side there was still some danger from enemy mortars, but overall they were able to push deeper towards the bunkers. With most of the mortars gone, some of the US soldiers felt bold as they picked up the pace, but the Germans were still able to do some damage. The huge gaping craters by the Navy's shellings were used as a place of safety and cover. The Americans were nearing the neighboring town and had captured the cliff. They received orders earlier to give the Navy a signal with a flare for the second wave of soldiers to land. But the delayed operation resulted in the signal being fired too late, and the reinforcements were sent to Omaha Beach, where the Americans suffered heavy casualties. At Pointe du Hoc, the fighting had spread out. It usually only involved a handful of soldiers mingling in brief skirmishes. The Germans who were still alive either retreated towards the village or dug themselves in to ambush any approaching soldiers. They were of course too few to do any significant harm, but still cost a few Americans their lives. Those who decided to stay and fight stood their ground, but were eventually wiped out, creating an opening to the village. The capture of the cliff at Pointe du Hoc had come at a great cost. The Americans lost over 70% of their troops in the battle. All that was left was a small village where a few German troops held out. The Americans attacked the cramped little town as they tried to get through the wall. The Germans were few, but had set up well defendable positions. Nevertheless, they were too weak to stop the US Army from proceeding. They used the last of their grenades and ammo in an attempt to kill as many troops as they could. Those holed up in the buildings were taken out as well as the Americans took hold over the courtyard. With the center building falling apart from a grenade, the US soldiers cleared the last of the Germans as one final German hit on the second floor of a building. The Americans had him pinned down as he panicked and was finally taken down. The town had been seized and the Americans secured a roadblock as a small patrol went out looking for the German artillery. Not too far from the roadblock, the soldiers stumbled on the abandoned guns as the order was given to take them out. The Americans used thermite grenades to disable the weapons once and for all. A German counterattack was imminent, but Pointe du Hoc had been captured by the Allies.